Hi, my name is Karen Pittman. I'm the co-founder, CEO, and president of the Forum for Youth Investment. Our mission is to change the odds that young people are ready for college, work, and life. We do that by working with leaders to focus on readiness, equity, and quality to make sure that we can really change the odds. Why do we use the phrase changing the odds? All young people can be celebrated when they beat the odds and overcome adversity. But that's not our job. Our job is really to change the odds, to take chance out of the equation by making systemic changes in the places, the systems, and the settings where they spend their time. Because young people's success should not be dependent on chance encounters. We do this by focusing on upgrading our language and our commitments. So first, we can't just talk about equality. To get to equality of outcomes, we actually have to focus on equity, making sure that young people have equitable opportunities. We also can't just talk about access. We have to make sure that we're talking about quality so that the places where young people spend their time are places where they're engaged and they're learning. And then finally, we can't just talk about completion. Seat time isn't enough, credentials aren't enough. Young people need to be ready for life's chances, life's opportunities, and all the things that come their way. We have to improve opportunities to get to improved outcomes, and doing that really means that we have to really change our language. Now, there's a lot of focus in this country on educational equity, and with ESSA, the Every Student Succeeds Act, states all across the country are focused on figuring out what they can do to improve equitable outcomes for young people. So we have communities looking at suspension rates, school climate, absenteeism, looking at graduation rates, looking at whether young people are really getting access to college and career curriculums. All of this is important and new work and important work to make sure that we're not blaming the victim, that we're looking at our schools to make sure that they are providing what young people need to have to be ready for college, work, and life. We applaud all of these efforts, but one of the things that we want to focus on is that we have to acknowledge that schools are not the only place where learning happens. So we have to take a careful look at where learning happens in school and out. I've had the privilege of being a commissioner on the National Commission for Social, Emotional, and Academic Development. And as a part of that commission, we put together a group focused on youth development and looked at the broader places where young people are spending their time. And we've just put out a recent report on where and when learning happens, building partnerships. I want to talk a little bit about why this report was so important and why it was so important to bring together those actors in the community that have really contributed to young people's overall well-being and contributed to their education and development experiences. First, we really have to acknowledge, again, that learning doesn't just happen in school. Young people spend only about a quarter of their time in school. Families are central to this, as are community organizations and settings, as are their peers. And people point out to us that peer interactions are not just face-to-face, they're also on social media. The second thing that we have to point out, which is really important, is that when we think school, we often think classrooms. But classrooms are not the only place where learning happens. Young people spend time in the libraries, in the cafeterias, in the hallways, in the playgrounds. And there's a difference between the core academic classes in which content is being focused on and classes like art or music or drama where young people have more of a chance to engage, make choices, and be creative. So when we're looking at where learning happens, we have to look at the whole school day, and every minute as an opportunity for young people to be learning, growing, and developing and practicing what they're doing. We also then have to look at after school. What happens after school, what happens in the summer, what happens on the weekends, and the places in communities, those formal places where learning can happen. That's everything from youth organizations to clubs to libraries and museums, park and recreation programming, summer jobs. All of those are places where learning can happen. And then finally, all of this starts with the family, and that's why we have family in the center of this picture. Young people have experiences, their families are their first educators, but their families are also the people who are helping them navigate and make choices about where they find learning opportunities. So why is it important to have this expanded picture of where and when learning happens? For us, it's important because it flags for us that we need to know where engagement and learning aren't happening. These are not equitable settings. So when we talk about readiness, and this broader definition that young people have to have not just academic competence, but they have to have social and emotional competence, they have to have problem-solving skills and good cognitive skills, and they have to have a range of experiences. We're looking for quality environments to happen in all of those places. We need that definition of readiness to infuse definitions of quality across all of those settings. Then we have to start to ask the question of access. Do young people have equal access to those quality settings now that we've defined them? And the answer is clearly no. Clearly no. We know from many studies that by 6th grade, young people have had, low-income young people have had 4,000 hours different learning experiences than young people in more affluent communities. And so we know that learning access isn't equal. It isn't equal in school, and it isn't equal out of school. And that's why we have to take collective action by bringing all of those partners together. Family, school, community organizations, young people themselves need to infuse all of these learning environments to make sure that learning happens. So when we're talking about educational equity, we need to be linking these ideas of readiness and quality to equity, and we need to be talking about these as the prereqs, the prerequisites of what it takes to change the odds for young people. So I hope you'll join us in the conversations that we're going to be having this week and over the next month and over the next year to really make sure that when we're talking about educational equity, we're looking at the big picture of where learning happens.